All right, let's dive straight into this. Picture this. You've got absolutely nothing saved, starting entirely from scratch. Now, if you manage to stash away 1,000 pounds every single month and earn a standard 4% cash return, it's going to take you exactly 37 years to become a millionaire. So if you're 30 right now, well, that puts you at age 67 by the time you finally cross that seven-figure finish line.
Now, 37 years isn't a terrible trajectory, but what if I told you that by making just a few tiny tweaks to the math, we could actually shave off nearly 2 entire decades from that timeline? Seriously, you could hit that milestone way earlier than you ever thought possible. And get this, without necessarily scraping together a single extra penny in your monthly budget.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're totally demystifying wealth building by breaking it down into straightforward, no-nonsense math. Because the reality is, becoming a millionaire, it's not about winning the lottery or being some Wall Street genius. It genuinely just comes down to a super simple understanding of numbers that literally anyone can calculate on the back of a napkin.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're covering 1. The millionaire math baseline. 2. The 3 wealth levers. 3. The salary sacrifice shortcut. 4. Navigating risk and reward. 5. The volatility trade-off. And 6. Staying the course.
Okay, Section 1. The millionaire math baseline. Let's establish our foundation here, just to make sure we're completely clear on our target. People get kind of confused about what this milestone actually looks like in real life. In this explainer, being a millionaire simply means having a portfolio of savings and investments worth £1 million. We're not talking about living in £1 million house, and you don't need to go out and build a massive business empire. We are focusing strictly on liquid wealth. That's the target.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 3 wealth levers.
So to reach that shiny 7-figure goal, there are really only 3 mechanisms you need to keep in your back pocket. And understanding how they interact, well, that's the whole secret to accelerating your wealth. Step 1 is your contributions. How much cash you can actually put in every single month. Step 2 is the rate of return you can earn on those savings. And step 3 is just time. That's it. Those 3 little inputs control your entire financial destiny. Let's see what happens when we start messing with them.
Which brings us to Section 3, the salary sacrifice shortcut.
Okay, let's pull that first lever, contributions. We're going to see how we can drastically reduce the massive friction of taxes. Because, let's be real, saving £1,000 a month is genuinely tough these days with the cost of living and, frankly, high tax burdens. So we've got to look at where that money actually comes from. The difference between net and gross income is an absolute game changer here. Look at it this way. If you earn over £52,000 and you're a higher rate taxpayer, you actually have to earn about £1,600 in gross income just to be left with £1,000 in your bank account after taxes. So you aren't just giving up £1,000, you're really giving up £1,600 of hard-earned gross income. But here's the magic trick. By using a salary sacrifice to put that money directly into a workplace pension, it goes straight in, completely untouched by income tax. You get to keep the full £1,600 before the taxman even gets a chance to skim his 40% off the top.
Now, the obvious catch here, there's always a catch, right, is that any money funneled into this pension route is locked away tight. The current access age is 55, but honestly, for most of us watching this, you won't be able to touch those funds until you're 57. So if your big master plan involves spending this cash before then, well, this specific route just won't work for you. But as a long-term wealth building tool, it is incredibly powerful, and it drastically reduces the friction between what you earn and what you actually get to keep.
So let's jump back to our math for a second. By simply putting that gross £1,600 into a pension instead of dropping the net £1,000 into a standard bank account, your timeline to $1 million drops from 37 years down to just 28 years. I mean, that is a 9-year reduction. And remember, not a single extra penny has left your pocket to make that happen.
Moving on to Section 4, navigating risk and reward.
All right, so that takes care of the tax friction. Now let's pull our second lever, the rate of return. We've been using a pretty conservative 4% cash rate so far, but optimizing this really shows off the exponential power of compounding. We're still assuming that $1,600 gross monthly contribution, right? At a 4% return, you get there in 28 years. But if we bump your return up to 6%, that timeline suddenly shrinks to 24 years. Push it even further to an 8% return, and it drops to an absolutely astonishing 21 years. Think about that. From our original 37-year baseline, we've literally carved off massive chunks of time.
Next up, Section 5, the volatility trade-off.
Of course, getting that higher return isn't just about pressing a magic button. It actually requires a fundamental shift in how we think about risk.
You see, the reason cash accounts only pay 3% or 4% is because there's zero capital risk. Your savings account physically cannot go down in value. The stock market, on the other hand, can often yield 8% to 10% a year over the long term, but the price of admission for those gains is market risk. And look, risk in the stock market isn't about walking into a casino and putting it all on red. It's really just about volatility. It's about having the stomach to ride the roller coaster, watching your money temporarily drop in value on a screen, hopefully without getting motion sickness, and knowing that a properly diversified portfolio will historically bounce back over time.
So, how do you actually balance this? Well, a fantastic example is a multi-asset fund, like Vanguard's Life Strategy range. These funds blend stocks and bonds for you in one neat little wrapper. Check this out. Notice how the LS20 fund at the top has just 20% stock exposure? You get 3 to 4% returns, but you only have to stomach shallow drops of maybe 10%. But as you climb the ladder up to the LS100 fund, which is 100% stocks, your expected return jumps to 7% to 10%. The catch? You have to be prepared for temporary drops of 30 to 50% on your money. So the higher you climb, the greater the returns, for sure, but the heavier those temporary gut punches you're going to have to sit through.
And that brings us to Section 6, Staying the Course.
This leads us to the final and honestly probably the single most important element of our explainer today, your psychology. You can have all the math completely figured out, but at the end of the day, your behavior is what dictates the final outcome. The absolutely crucial point here is this. The number one thing that determines your success isn't picking the hottest stocks. It's not about perfectly timing the market either. It is simply your ability to stay the course. That £1,600 monthly contribution earning 8% will get you to $1 million in 21 years, but only if you actually stick with it for the whole 21 years without panicking and changing direction.
You know, the biggest mistake people make is reaching for the absolute highest return, taking on way more risk than they're actually comfortable with, and then getting totally spooked the second the market wobbles. They freeze, they stop their contributions, or even worse, they sell out at the very bottom. To survive this journey, you've got to avoid chasing the highest possible return. Instead, find a blend of risk you can personally tolerate. It's totally fine to trade off a few percentage points of potential return to find a volatility level you can actually stomach without bailing on your entire strategy.
And the good news is, to find that personal sweet spot, you really don't have to guess. You can use free resources like the Growth Forecaster app and the risk profiling tools we mentioned from the source material. These tools are fantastic. They help calculate your personal risk tolerance so you can see exactly where you should sit on that equity spectrum. Plus, they let you plug in your exact income and contributions so you can watch your timeline adapt right there in real time.
So there you have it. We've mapped out the math. We've bypassed all that nasty tax friction through salary sacrifice, we've optimized the returns, and we've accounted for the psychological roller coaster of market volatility. The numbers just do not lie, and they hold the power to shave almost 20 years off your wealth timeline. So the only question left to ask yourself right now is this: are you going to let the next 37 years just happen to you, or are you ready to pull these levers and take total control of your timeline today?